Let's get into it.
Remakes and remasters seem to be dominating these days, and here's what's kind of cool.
Yeah.
There's a new survey, and it shows something real striking. That 90% of you have played a remaster or a remake within the last few years. Which isn't really a surprise. I mean, I've certainly played a few. I imagine you have. And who could blame you? These games are dominating. And the biggest examples...
There's a reason why they're dominating. It's because they're being remade off of classic games that were actually good, especially in their time, and now they're being redone for a newer generation, a newer audience. And since they are, genuinely good games, they're going to do well.
Probably Elder Scrolls Oblivion Remastered, because that has outsold all but one of the new games released this year. So you might wonder then, is this just the industry's future? An endless cycle of nostalgic re-releases forever?
No. If Sony had their way about it, they would just continue to redo The Last of Us over and over again.
All consuming itself. Well, it turns out maybe not. Because for most people playing these remakes, it's actually not about nostalgia. It's literally impossible because most of them haven't played the original version. And that's just one snippet of the new data we've got about remakes.
I think another interesting point to that is a lot of times when they remake or remaster, you have, the people that grew up playing the game and they look at a remaster and say, well, that's not the original. They've changed some things and I don't like it, so I'm not going to play it. But yet you have a much broader audience of newer generation of people that are playing games, and they're a lot bigger of an audience than what the original audience was when the game came out. So since you have a much bigger audience now, or a bigger generation of kids or people playing them now, they might not see it that way. And the people that are in it for nostalgia, they're just not going to play it. They're going to sit there and they'll pull the same shit that our parents pulled on us, which was, I don't like it. It's different. It's changed. I don't like it. I don't like the original. Even though some of these remakes have actually had really nice quality of life stuff.
When I say every week brings a new remake or remaster, that's not idle words, it's quite literal. Last week had Trials in the Sky first chapter and Platypus Reclayed. This week there's Pac-Man World 2 Repack. Perhaps not Oblivion Remastered here, and you'd be forgiven for being confused at how it appears there's some cultural zeitgeist crying out for early 2000s games that have already been re-released and ported half a dozen times. It's a bit weird, but in 2025...
I'm not gonna lie, when he talk about the Pac-Man thing, I don't remember that game at all until they showed the clip of the original, and then it's like, oh yeah, sorry, tangent.
Remake culture has really just reached new heights here. To put some stats in the Elder Scrolls Oblivion situation, that remaster sold more copies in its first month than the original game did in 15 months, and in total...
Again, there's just a bigger audience of people that are playing games now, especially with the current generation. There's just more gamers, I guess you can call it, even though I hate using that term. But yeah, there is more people playing games now. So yes, it's going to sell better.
It has already completely outsold the original release of the game, which is kind of wild. Now, you could argue that something sad is happening here, that publishers are just pushing lazy nostalgia grabs because they can't make new games that are good, and that nobody's money's going to new games.
There's a reason why they can't make games that are good, and that's a big topic of conversation. Only thing I will say is I think that a lot of these development teams are held back in some ways, and in other ways they don't want to push creativity.
Games. And then maybe this all shows us that people crave the good games of the past that we used to play, not the bad games that we get now. But that wouldn't make full sense because of a kind of staggering statistic from this recent survey, that 85% of you have played a remake or a remaster of a game that you did not play in the first place. So it actually seems that this stuff is expanding into a new audience. Let's dive into the survey, and to do that, we gotta define our terms. Remakes are...
So I think another good example of that is just that these were classic games. They were good enough to be considered classics, and then they were also good enough to be considered for these remakes or remasters. So they're good games for a reason. And that's part of the reason why some of these remasters and remakes are so popular and why they sell so much, is because they were just genuinely good games. Go figure. You make a good game, people are going to like it. Doesn't even matter what generation it is. You shine it up a little bit and polish it for a newer generation that's used to more fidelity, and they're going to like it just as much as people that played it when it originally came out.
Complete reimaginings built from scratch, so updated graphics, gameplay mechanics, and sometimes story elements. Remasters are enhanced versions.
Sorry for pausing so much, but I will say that I hate it when they change story elements for remakes and remasters. I don't think that should not be a deciding factor in a remake. I think if you're going to remake a game or remaster a game, you should not be changing story or narrative bits. I think that should be the one thing that doesn't get changed, and I think that the only thing that you should change is gameplay, visuals, or maybe quality of life stuff. But other than that, I think narrative and story should stay exactly the way it was to keep that authenticity to the original.
Of originals. That means improved visuals, sound, and performance, but the core gameplay staying the same. And here's what the data tells us. MTM Consulting surveyed 1,500 US and UK gamers, and GameIndustry.biz brought the data to our attention, and for the sake of uniformity, they gave respondents those specific definitions so everyone's on the same terms. And then they asked people how they feel. And the findings, so there's the 90% stat of people having played at least one remaster or remake, and considering how many there have been, that's not a surprise. Then there's the 85% stat that I just talked about. But there's some other ones too. 80% and 71% of people respectively believe that these games are comforting and nostalgic, at the same time as being a good way to share beloved games with new generations. So through these numbers, we actually see that the majority of people are picking up these games for the first time. And we'll come back to that. But where it's getting tricky for publishers is what the hell to do. And we've got big examples of that. Some of them are, say...
I think some publishers are jumping on this because they see it as a cash grab. Like, I'll be honest, some of these games that get remakes or remasters are just very half-assed, and you can clearly tell they're just trying to make a quick buck off of nostalgia, hoping that they might be able to make some extra sales on it. Now, there are very good cases and very clear cases of when it's not necessarily a cash grab, because at the end of the day, yes, they're trying to make money off of these things, but you can tell when there's genuine love and care that goes into it because they're done really well. So I will say the Oblivion remaster was a good example. I think some of the other ones that I can think of, for me personally, I think the Metal Gear Solid remake was really good. FF7, not a very good remake. I love the original. I like the combat system in 7 for the remake, but they changed way too much of the story. Way too much of the story. It was not needed at all. But then there's also cases of, like, I think, was it a Warhammer game that was remade or remastered or something, and it barely looked any different. Like, I see too many examples of games that are like remastered and then like it barely looks any different from the original. Nobody cares about that. And they want a more modernized version of the original. That's what people are looking for with this kind of stuff.
Older Assassin's Creed remake examples.
There's
the whole Space Marine 1 thing.
Oh, yeah,
and there's a core tension. If you change the game too much, some people won't like it. If you don't change it enough, other people also won't like it, because maybe what they're expecting is a Resi 4 remake tier.
Oh yeah, Resident Evil 4.
But you know
what's
nice?
Another really good
You don't need to take
remake.
this shit in vibes, because now we've actually got
been so many
data.
I forget all of them.
Let me know if this gels with your experience. So 35% of players say remakes are better when they change narrative or gameplay elements. 30%.
I will say Capcom has done very, very well when it comes to the Resident Evil remakes. They've done a very good job of like kind of capturing that originality of it, like the originals, and then making it more modernized. They've done a very good job at it. So I do condemn them, or not condemn. I don't condemn them, but no, I commend them very well. They've done a great job.
Say they're worse. 35% say they're fine either way. So yeah, if you're a developer, what do you do? It's a third, a third, a third.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, I mean, anytime you do a remake, anytime you make any game, it's always a shot in the dark. Like, you can't predict the future, so yes, you're just going to have to do whatever you feel is right. Release it, see how it does. If it doesn't do so hot, you know how to adjust in the future.
Regardless, it seems some people are going to be unhappy, and this might explain the continual discourse around these games. We haven't settled on a correct approach, but we have now learned some things. So what affects player experience the most? Well, making games look and feel modern, and as the survey people put it, gamers expect major graphical overhauls, updated controls, and improvements to mechanics.
Exactly.
Now, this is where we can get into some solid examples. Take Capcom's Resident Evil remakes. At least one of the interviewees specifically cited tank controls, basically just saying gamers of a younger age would probably struggle with them.
I don't think tank controls is something that would ever be attractive to a more modern audience. So like today's generation of kids, they didn't grow up having to play those kind of games, because like originally in PS1 a lot of games were like that because that was just the way they made games back then. They really wasn't like innovated on in any sort of way, like early PS1 era kind of games. So yes, that's something that as millennials we kind of grew up with, but as time went on and people found new ways to make controls and made more modern control schemes, then yes, I don't think today's generation of kids, like, they'd probably see that and like, ooh, I hate this, and then never turn it on again.
And yeah, can you imagine the Zoomers and the Gen Alphas trying to do tank controls like original Resi? That would be mad. Though obviously, if you change too much, it will feel wrong to fans of the original. Like, in a way, there has to be a little bit of authenticity promoting clunk in the controls of Leon, because if he controlled like an uber badass, he wouldn't exactly play like one, because it's your mastery of his controls that actually nails the character's development and capability throughout the series. But as we press on through the survey, well, we get to talk about pricing. And certainly, there's opinions in pricing. 74% of users expect a game to be cheaper than the original release.
I think that if you're going to just remake a game or remaster a game, it should not be a full price game. No shot. 100% it should not be it should not be released as like a $60, $70, $80 game. Personally, I think the $40 to $50 range would be way more feasible for remakes and remasters, because ultimately you're not making a brand new or original thing. You're just rehashing something and you're just putting a little bit of polish on it. That's about it. Now, going off of this, apparently we have some really greedy people or plebs that just want free or included in a subscription. Who the fuck wants it included in a subscription? Because at that point, it's not free. You're still paying for a subscription, so it's not free. Fucking idiots. Anywho.
To a greater or lesser degree. And that's both about the value of the upgraded product and the decision to publish it at all. 6%, though, go further. They say they want them free or within subscription services. And also timing matters. Only 4% of people think 2 years is enough time between releases. 14% say 3 to 4. 32% say 5.
Okay. 5 to 6 years. You think that a game should be 5 to 6 years old before it gets a re-release? No. Not every game can be like Skyrim, okay? Personally, I think it has to be at least 10 to 15 years old. At the least. Like, minimum, you're talking a decade-old game. Like, then because then by that time, hardware has changed, the way we make games has changed, games look a lot different, graphical fidelity is different. So yes, I think 10 to 15 years is that range of what a game should be re-released after.
5 to 6 as the appropriate amount of time. And certainly, hey, looking at you, PlayStation, you guys really do like doing it pretty quick. But if you want a perfect example of everything going wrong, it comes from a really goddamn sad place, and that is the Space Marine Mastercrafted Edition from Sega earlier this year. Oh dear, it did not do well. Existing players felt cheated, there was no discounted upgrade path, the Anniversary Edition had effectively been re-released back in 2021, and the Mastercrafted Edition really didn't add enough graphical improvements whatsoever. It felt like a cheap...
I'm sorry, but this looks like something that somebody could have just modded for free. This just looks like a modded, higher resolution version of an older game. I've seen mods for games that do better than this. Like, let's be honest. I would be very curious to see how much they charged for this, because I guarantee you right now it was a lot more than $30 or $40 probably.
Cash grab to capitalize on Space Marine 2 being pretty goddamn good. So here's the lesson. Especially once a game is accessible in a modern digital format to audiences, you can't just keep hitting the re-release button. But companies will obviously keep trying.
Unless you're Bethesda. Unless your name is Bethesda or Naughty Dog, you can do re-releases for anything under the sun.
and that's because the opportunities far, far outweigh the costs. We've got to talk about the business case. Think about the business side like this. Oblivion is a goddamn dream scenario. It massively outsold the original, in great part because there are simply more gamers now. And one thing you'll see in, like, say, rookie startups is people being like, oh, you know, if I just get 10% of the market, then I'll make X amount of money. And that's a little bit silly, but it can kind of fit our purposes for here. Even if you assume that a game sold to 1% of the audience way back in the day, and it could still sell to 1% of the current audience again in 2025, then it would be worth the cost of updating because, good God, the audience for games has increased massively. And this survey effectively validates that logic. The idea that 85% of players are willing to buy remakes with no personal attachment is huge. Now, maybe they have nostalgia for an era.
Now, yes, and I think that's part of it, is that they have parents or other older relatives that grew up playing some of these games and they've heard it. It's been through like word of mouth, but it's such an older game and they either don't have the console or don't know how to, you know, emulate it or whatever, or just don't have access to it. And so they can't play it, or they have no interest because it's so old and it just looks old or looks janky and stuff like that. It doesn't appeal to them because it doesn't look modern. It doesn't look refreshed. And so I think that's another part of the reason why they don't go back and just play originals like this. But they've heard about it. They know from, you know, through word of mouth and people talking about older games and how it was, you know, such a great time. I think it's definitely I think a lot of it has to do with the original graphics or the originality of the game and the inability to play it on original hardware or play the original game.
There'll be creator coverage, maybe from people who played it back in the day, so these remasters will kind of have Vanguard-ish super fans. And it helps with branding. Popular games guarantee at least some audiences. And taking a look at my personal playing habits, I've got to say I do have a bit of a theory here in why these games can work so goddamn well. So, across this channel, across the years, we've talked about so many game development stories that have been utter goddamn shit shows. I think a great example of one which, I mean, that it even came out is kind of shocking. It would be Dragon Age Veilguard. So the deal with Dragon Age, right? That went through...
They're never going to live this down. Like, I really don't think they're ever going to live it down. Oh boy.
Through like multiple redevelopments. And I believe they did a reboot and then made the version we got in like 18 months. And that is a story that is just repeated across so many games. Now, a lot of that is because of planning risk, right? There's the game that they plan, and then they just keep on needing to goddamn reboot and reboot and reboot, and it ends up being complete chaos. But you see with these remasters, you already have a proven formula. And that proven formula means you have far less design risk. One of the things that we talk about in...
It's like trying to build a house, but the foundation is already there. You already have the walls. All you got to do is put the furniture in. That's it. That's how easy it is for these remakes. The majority of the work is done for you. All you have to do is flesh it out a little bit and, you know, spruce it up. That's it.
Like, project planning is the difference between a known unknown and an unknown unknown, right? So an unknown unknown is something you just truly cannot predict, and any purely new project is going to be stuffed full of them. Whereas if you're doing a remaster, man, that's going to be way, way, way easier, because you can point to everyone across your production team to the literal thing that they're remaking. And that is actually huge, because one of the things we're pretty good at in this industry is, well, scaling up big production teams. One of the things we're less good at is effectively using all of those production teams. Some of that can be bad management, as seen in so many stories. Some of that can just be that games are extremely complex insofar as software development goes. They have so much design risk that with teams as large as game teams have ended up being, it's hard to just utilize everyone well. And that's where I think the remake...
Overbloated companies, and most of the teams that are doing these remakes are very small teams. Like, they're not utilizing like an entire like AAA studio to do these remakes or remasters. They're using smaller teams, so it ends up being better in the long run.
And the remasters actually can do something really important. They can take away risk, and that opens the door for pretty amazing levels of polish. The best examples, of course, Resi 4 and probably Oblivion. I'm sure you can name a few as well. But here's the weird thing. It's not just successful games getting remastered.
I will say also the Demon Souls remaster, and then the I think it was Shadow of the Colossus remaster that they did a while back. Those were done by very small teams as well. So it just goes to show you can do a lot more with a smaller group of people. And the fact that that's done inside of AAA publishing, they already had all the signs on how to do these games properly. They're just not seeing their own path that they've laid for themselves.
Any game that exists within an IP library can get a second chance. If a game was niche before, well, actually that niche could be far larger in 2025.
Exactly.
And that's why we've been seeing companies hoovering up legacy IP. Seriously, Embracer does it, Atari does it, Microids, I think I'll go with Microids, they do it as well. If you can sell die-hard fans of the old stuff, you can also sell to new genre fans. And it seems that's been driving a lot of IP hoovering up over the last few years. Ultimately then, it's a perfect storm. You get either lower development costs or perhaps more efficient deployment of your capital because, well, you know, you're remaking a thing. You already know what the thing looks like. Even better for the rights holders, there's the potential of outsourcing for upscaling and improvements with the likes of, say, Asper. That sort of thing's always been the case, but with this new data that we've got, we can see that the audiences, we are just as responsible for all of this stuff happening because we actually do turn up for these games and we buy them. And you know what? Whenever I think about my recent play habits, yeah, there's actually a lot of this in them because it's been Oblivion remastered. Recently, Last of Us Part 1 remastered. You know why? Girlfriend hadn't played it. We wanted to play through it together. The upgraded version, as it turns out, while yeah, the multiplayer ain't there, god damn, it is gorgeous. And the gameplay updates have it playing.
As much as I like to make jokes and bash on Sony for all the times they've tried to remake Last of Us, it does look very pretty, I will say that. But come on, there are plenty of other Sony IPs that they could remaster. I'm looking at you, Killzone 1. That's right.
Slick as hell. It's been a brilliant experience. And it proves the core of The Last of Us is as timelessly good as it always was. If you give it a big new lick of paint, it'll just be the best version to play now. In the best case, it can be...
Okay, I'm just gonna say this. I thought there was a fly buzzing around my screen until I noticed it was in his video. Yeah.
Like when you get a new scan, a new remastering of a classic movie that's absolutely beloved, that allows people to fully enjoy it and fully appreciate it on newer hardware. And I think that's honestly great for games. There's loads of games that I think shouldn't be relegated to the past. But there is another side to this. Making new games is more expensive than ever. And as an example of that, Shuhei Yoshida, who you may know for being fairly legendary within PlayStation for a long ass time, he was saying recently, and he's not with PlayStation anymore, but that the single-player games now cost so much money to make that they actually need the additional income from remasters and PC ports to actually make shit viable. Now, theoretically, there is an upper limit here. You can't constantly remake old stuff because eventually you'll run out of it. And if there's any form of reckoning our industry is going to face, it's probably that senior staff have often been treated quite badly. There's been a lot of burnout. There's been a lot of people leaving the games industry. And in an ideal world, they are the people who make the new games using all of their experience. And in my estimation, when you combine that with a lot of industry trend chasing, that's probably a large part of why a lot of new games just don't feel like they hit as good as games used to. Games that when they're remastered, it sure does seem we all lap up and buy. Okay, what I want you to do is let me know what is your best and worst recent experience with a remake or remaster. And once you're done with that, well, there's a company we need to talk about. It's called Bungie, because, goddamn, I think they need a remake or remaster at this stage. But seriously, the situation's kind of dire, and you can learn all about that in this video next.
Oh, boy. I do think he's right. I think that, yes, these companies are remastering a lot of games, but I think he's hit the nail on the head, that it's not necessarily nostalgia driven, and obviously the survey shows that. But at the same time, let's be fair, they initially start up these projects out of nostalgia. Like, that's what originally they were made for. But there is also clear indicators that some of these remakes are simply just done to make a quick buck. obviously. When you see a remake or remaster that basically just looks like the original and nothing has changed, they didn't add anything new, no quality of life changes, no nothing, it's pretty obvious what the goal is, just to make a quick buck or make some money off of it. I think we're going to continue to see good remakes, good remasters, and then you're going to have some in the fold that are just straight up garbage. Like, there's no other way around it. You're going to have some companies that just aren't going to put the time and effort into it, and they're just going to, slap a coat of paint on it and ship it. That's about it. Man, that's just my thoughts. So feel free to let me know what you guys think in the comments below. So, but until next time, peace.